Queen Elizabeth II has died at the age of 96, peacefully at her home of Balmoral. Britain's longest reigning monarch died on Thursday afternoon. The news was announced after her family had flown in to be together at the Queen's Scottish home. She had pledged to dedicate her life to duty, and did just that until her final days, last seen to be in good spirits in a photograph after appointing her 15th Prime Minister just 48 hours before. In a statement at 6:30 p.m., Buckingham Palace confirmed that she had died, and reassured the public that the moment had been peaceful. The Queen's health is understood to have deteriorated rapidly on Thursday, with members of her family making last-minute arrangements to fly to Balmoral. She is succeeded by her eldest son and heir, until then the Prince of Wales, who became king upon the moment of her death. A spokesman confirmed that he will be known as King Charles III. The Duchess of Cornwall has become the Queen Consort. In a written statement on Thursday night, the King described his mother's death as a moment of the greatest sadness for me, and all members of my family. Queen Elizabeth II's death comes after one of the most significant periods of her reign, in which she rallied the nation during the coronavirus pandemic, and felt the affection of her people as she returned to public life after the death of her beloved Prince Philip, and celebrated her Platinum Jubilee year. The news will set in motion a period of national mourning for a monarch few can remember life without. It was announced in a brief but moving statement, only after senior members of the royal family gathered at Balmoral to say their final farewell. Under the simple heading Queen Elizabeth II 1926-2022, in a statement issued at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, Buckingham Palace said, "The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening, and will return to London tomorrow." For her millions of admirers, news of the Queen's death came suddenly. Just 6 hours after it emerged she was seriously unwell. She was last photographed formally appointing Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, at Balmoral on Tuesday. She postponed a virtual Privy Council meeting the following day, after being advised by doctors to rest. At 12:30 p.m. on Thursday, Buckingham Palace announced that she was under the care of her doctors at her Scottish home. Following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health, and have recommended she remain under medical supervision, said a spokesman. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Close quote. The news, relayed to the royal family only shortly beforehand, set in motion a major operation to bring her 4 children, as well as the Dukes of Cambridge and Sussex, to her side. The King and Queen Consort, who were already in Scotland, travelled by helicopter from Dumfries House in the first sign to the public of how serious the Queen's condition was. The Duke of Cornwall and Cambridge, who had that morning dropped his 3 children off for their first full day of school with no sign of anything amiss, made emergency arrangements to travel from Windsor. He flew on an RAF plane, a Dassault Falcon, with his uncles the Duke of York and Earl of Wessex, joined by the Countess. Landing at 3:50 p.m, the Duke was seen driving the family for the journey between Aberdeen Airport and Balmoral. They arrived at Balmoral just after 5 p.m, by which time news of the Queen's death had been delivered to their inner circle. Mindful of the effect on their young children, the Duchess of Cambridge chose to stay at home, to be there when they returned from school, and relay the news about their great-grandmother in person. In Britain for a few days by coincidence, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex cancelled an engagement at the Well Child Awards on Thursday evening, and was said by a spokesman to be heading to Balmoral together. This was later amended to say that the Duke was travelling alone, returning to his family in their hour of deepest sorrow. He was photographed arriving at Balmoral in a car shortly before 8 p.m, around 4 hours after his brother and uncles. Premier Minister Truss was told of the Queen's death at 4:30 p.m. by Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary. She spoke to the King shortly before delivering her public statement, in which she paid tribute to the Queen as the rock on which modern Britain was built. The Queen's presence at Balmoral for her final hours will come as deep comfort for her family, who knew how much her Scottish home meant to her. She is the first monarch to die there. Her 4 children and most of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren have spent time with her there this summer, enjoying the countryside of the Highlands and the picnics that have been such a part of their summer retreat for decades. On Thursday night, the magnitude of the Queen's death was captured by tributes from world leaders, her prime ministers and the public, the vast majority of which, an estimated 58.8 million in the UK alone, have never known life without her. This summer, millions turned out to show the Queen just how much she meant to them, in Platinum Jubilee celebrations that saw her appear on the Buckingham Palace balcony to uproarious cheers. The Queen had enjoyed remarkably good health until her mid-90s, when she scaled back her public appearances after suffering mobility issues and illness that required her to rest. As she increasingly suffered from what Buckingham Palace described as episodic mobility problems, she was compelled to miss events, including the state opening of Parliament, service of remembrance at the Cenotaph and the Commonwealth Day service. In February 2022, she contracted COVID-19 amid an outbreak at Windsor Castle, but appeared to have recovered well. She appeared at the Chelsea Flower Show in a golf buggy in a rare concession to her age, but went on to miss a string of her favourite engagements, from Royal Ascot to the Bremer Games just last weekend. Through it all, she maintained her devotion to her constitutional duties, reading her red boxes and holding audiences. During her reign, she visited 116 countries on 261 official overseas visits, including 78 state visits, making her by far the most traveled monarch in history. She also worked tirelessly to promote the more than 600 charities of which she was patron. Despite her exhaustive schedule of engagements, the Queen would begin every day by reading through state papers sent to her by government departments in the famous red boxes, approving and signing them where necessary. This routine never varied, no matter where in the world she was. When she was born on April 21, 1926, Elizabeth's parents had no reason to expect that she would one day be Queen. Her father's older brother, Edward, was heir to the throne, and it was only on his abdication in 1936 that Elizabeth became heir presumptive. "I will be good," she replied, when told by her governess of her new elevated status. On her 21st birthday, in an address from Cape Town, Elizabeth had declared that "my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service." She spent the rest of her life making good on that pledge, and the nation showed its gratitude to her with the memorable celebrations of her silver, golden, diamond and platinum jubilees. The Queen is survived by her 4 children, the King, the Princess Royal, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex. She had 8 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. The Duke of Cambridge has immediately inherited his father's dukedom, with he and his wife known henceforth as the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge.